let's get straight to the point. Wednesday was horrific enough, but unbelievably, since then, the Democrats and their Silicon Valley allies somehow have managed to make it worse. It started with a mob laying siege to the Capitol, totally abhorrent, unequivocally condemned. Now, it's some of the most powerful people in the world laying siege to you. Pelosi with her spiteful, vindictive, vengeful rage, Jeff Bezos, Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, Apple's Tim Cook with their unprincipled, menacing, incendiary purge. These people say they want to unite the country. On Wednesday, the country was united in utterly condemning the violence and chaos in the Capitol riot. Now, thanks to Pelosi, Bezos, Dorsey, Zuckerberg and Cook, everyone's back in their tribal camps. Nice work, guys. The establishment may think they can get rid of Trump, but they can't get rid of the 75 million Americans who voted for him. They can't get rid of the multiracial working-class coalition he assembled, the movement he built, the ideas he championed. And right now, after all that's happened, those people, that movement who believe in these ideas, they still back Trump. We have to understand why. Trump's critics say he has no empathy. As is so often the case, they are guilty of the exact same thing they accuse others of. Some of us reject violence, hate, intolerance, disrespect unconditionally. It's all wrong, wherever it comes from and whoever it's aimed at. But that is not the standard followed by the left, by the establishment, by the media. Yes, they condemn violence when it's committed by people they despise, but they not only excuse hate, intolerance, and disrespect, they practice it on a daily basis. Since this show began 3.5 years ago, we've worked hard to try and avoid the conflict culture that's tearing America apart. We've advocated, constructively I hope, for positive populism, pro-worker, pro-family, pro-community, pro-America. We've engaged respectfully on that agenda with Democrats like Ro Khanna, Tim Ryan and John Delaney. I want us to look ahead positively tonight. But first we have to be clear about how we got to this point. Clarity means seeing things not just from your point of view, but from others. Listen to this.
We know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that a riot is the language of the unheard.
Civil rights revolutionary Martin Luther King Jr. once said, but in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear?
I agree with that, and I tried to do that with the racial justice protest this summer. Of course, we condemned the violence and destruction that cost at least 30 people their lives. But we didn't run around saying that everyone who supported BLM, who advocated for BLM, who gave a platform to BLM and its ideas, who, in the approved term, enabled BLM, we didn't say all those people had blood on their hands because 30 people died. We didn't put all the protesters in the same basket. We distinguished between the rioters and those protesting peacefully for a righteous cause. And I supported that cause while condemning the violence and killing. Many of you didn't like what I said. I argued that there is racial discrimination, which we do need to address, and that actually it's conservative ideas like strong families and school choice that are best placed to address it. I argued for police reform, not police retreat. And in exactly the same way, every reasonable person can surely distinguish between the rioters on Wednesday and those protesting peacefully. Major changes to the voting system with the virus as pretext, but long pushed by Democrats for partisan ends, rushed through in certain battleground states in ways that clearly violate the Constitution. Those changes have undermined confidence in our elections. That is real. You won't make it go away by calling it Trump's big lie and Fox News propaganda. It's 4 out of 5 Republicans, 40% of Americans, 4 million Democrats. We'd love an audience that big. If the Capitol is the symbol of our democracy, elections are our actual democracy. Last summer, I argued for police reform. No reasonable person could now deny that we need electoral reform. But no one on CNN or MSNBC or anywhere else on the left tries to see it from anyone else's point of view. Instead, it's all hyperbolic rage from morning till night. Traitors, sedition. Trump supporters have blood on their hands. They complain about incendiary rhetoric, then spend all day spouting it. They say that anyone who questions the election incited actual violence. Does that mean all these statements incited actual violence?
Go to the Hill today. Get up and please get up in the face of some Congress people.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
The unrest in the streets, which that Democrat member of Congress was calling for, claimed at least 30 lives. So is it right, is it reasonable to say she has blood on her hands? Of course not. So why did they all say that now? Because they've become so self-righteous, so sanctimonious, they've lost all self-awareness. Listen to this exchange on The View last week.
The rhetoric in the media needs to be more respectful of people, of Trump voters.
We lost 4 years ago. Now, he's lost this year. You're not allowed to kvetch and poop all over this. This is not the American way.
You're not allowed to kvetch and poop over an election you lost, she says. What? After 2016, the Democrats and the media did nothing but kvetch and poop. Kvetching and pooping was how they filled their days for 4 years. From even before the inauguration, they worked to overturn the election, delegitimize President Trump, and demonize his supporters. And yet, incredibly, a smart and thoughtful person like David Plouffe, Obama's campaign manager, said this not long ago.
I never thought I'd see a day where you saw pretty much an entire party in this country refuse to accept election results.
What does he think his party did? After 2016, they say, oh, but Hillary conceded. And it's true that she read out a 20-minute speech. But she spent the next 4 years walking back her concession as she and her entire party refused to accept that Trump was a legitimate president.
He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Now they completely dismiss evident election irregularities and even say that asking questions about the election amounts to treason. But hang on a second. After 2016, their leaders and the leaders of powerful arms of our government like the FBI invented something called Russia collusion. They were never able to prove it, but they kept it going for 4 years by saying, oh, we're just asking questions. We just need to
get to the bottom of it.
Get to the bottom of it.
Get to the bottom of it.
Getting to the bottom of this.
Get into the bottom of it.
We are going to get to the bottom of this.
Get to the bottom of what? The entire thing was based on a made-up dossier paid for by Mark Elias, the exact same lawyer who led Joe Biden's 2020 election efforts. But trying to overturn an election that way isn't treason. It's just getting to the bottom of it. Got that? We could go on. But there's a deeper factor than the political hypocrisy. Earlier I talked about our conflict culture, and that's obviously been fueled by both sides. But the cruel culture of class contempt, you only see that on the left, in the media, from establishment Republicans.
It's not surprising then that they get bitter. They cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
That's partly him playing to their base and playing to their audience, the credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump.
And then it spilled out again, didn't it, this week?
They're high-fiving each other for this deplorable display. And they're going to go back, to the Olive Garden and to the Holiday Inn that they're staying at and the Garden Marriott.
I've no problem agreeing with him that the violence and rioting was deplorable. But the class contempt, what odious bigotry, what disgusting snobbery. He's the privileged heir to a fashion fortune. I guess he'd rather be at the French Laundry with Gavin Newsom. But that casual insult captured so much of what's gone wrong. Over the years, as I've become an advocate for positive populism, people say, how can you speak for the people? You're wealthy and part of the elite. But I never forget where I came from. My family, Hungarian refugees and immigrants, working people. We didn't come from money. I know what it's like to have no money. I've worked as a cleaner, washing dishes, worked on construction sites. I would never speak about working people the way so many in our elite do today. Working class Americans have felt that class contempt for years. Donald Trump was the first leader they'd seen who didn't seem to share it. The elite laugh at the way he spoke, the way he looked, what he ate.
Is there anything more Trump than eating McDonald's by candlelight? Like, I feel like that's him. If you combine any fancy thing with any garbagey thing, that's Trump's style.
Well, I love McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's. Yes, the elite can laugh at Trump, but for millions of Americans, he was the first leader who saw them and respected them.
We won with highly educated. We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated. We're the smartest people. We're the most loyal people.
They laughed at that too. They laughed at Trump for saying he loved the poorly educated. And these elites talk about compassion. It's not their fault they're poorly educated. They're poorly educated because for so long, so many Americans have had no choice but to go to failing public schools. And guess where the schools are failing most? The very places run by Democrats who sneer at the poorly educated. We're not going to get anywhere the way we're going. Wednesday's atrocity, Pelosi and big tech's response, this cycle of rage, it's not going to help anyone. Most of my life, my friends, the people I work with and spend time with, they've completely disagreed with my politics. Maybe that helped me see things from the other side's point of view. I never really felt they saw things from my point of view, but there you go. We never let it get between us on a human level. But in the last couple of years, something seems to have completely changed. I saw it with Brexit. We see it here with Trump. People being called out and cancelled and condemned and told they're traitors and have blood on their hands when all they're doing is trying to stand up for the poorly educated, for the people who don't have a voice, who don't have power, who don't have the opportunities open to the educated elite. We have to stop this. We have to listen to people who think differently. We have to respect people who live differently. We have to stop all the virtue signaling and performative outrage and save our passion for real change that helps people. Instead of banning the words mother and father, let's work on policies that make sure every child is raised in a stable, loving home. Instead of insulting the working class, let's make sure they get the skills to actually have work that's rewarding and well paid. Now, more than ever, we need to take the best of Trump, the respect for those who are left behind, the strength to challenge elitism, the ideas that help lift up the working class. It is our duty to take that and make it the positive future of the Republican Party and this great country.